Well, an ancient discovery is shedding light on the early church. The Megiddo mosaic dates back nearly 2,000 years, and experts believe it decorated one of the earliest Christian worship.
For centuries, the narrative of Western civilization has been anchored by a specific set of sacred texts. We have built laws, cultures, and entire moral frameworks around these established chapters. Yet, what if the foundation we rely on is only a fragment of a much larger architecture? Modern scholarship is now peeling back the layers of a hidden history, revealing that the origins of our most influential beliefs may be far more complex than the traditional record suggests. Recent excavations in remote desert caves and forgotten monastic libraries have yielded parchment and papyrus that defy the standard canon. These manuscripts contain dialogues and philosophies that challenge the long-held boundaries of institutional thought. These are not mere myths or folklore. They are tangible artifacts of a lost perspective that was once silenced, now resurfacing to demand a re-examination of everything we thought we understood about the past. For nearly 2,000 years, the world has believed we already know the words of Jesus. They are printed, preached, and repeated across generations. But what if that belief is incomplete? What if some of his most controversial teachings were never written into the Bible at all? New archaeological evidence suggests that Jesus may have spoken words the Church never recorded. In recent decades, archaeologists and historians have uncovered ancient manuscripts, fragments, and forgotten texts, documents that reference sayings attributed to Jesus that do not appear in any official scripture. These are not legends, they are physical discoveries, buried, hidden, and ignored for centuries. So why were these words left out? Who decided what the world was allowed to remember and what had to disappear? Tonight, we follow the evidence step by step, separating fact from speculation and uncovering why these lost words still matter today. Stay with us until the end, because the final discovery challenges everything historians thought they knew. It began when a new team of archaeologists decided to take a bold risk. They weren't searching for gold or precious jewels. Instead, they were chasing something far more elusive, a town mentioned in the Bible more frequently than almost any other, a place that had somehow vanished completely from the surface of the earth. The excavation began in the punishing heat of summer. The air was thick and heavy, filled with the smell of soaked soil and rotting vegetation. There was nothing glamorous about the work. It was exhausting, backbreaking. Pumps ran non-stop to prevent lake water from flooding the trenches. For every foot they dug down, the water pushed back, trying to reclaim the hole. It felt as if the land itself was fighting to protect a long-buried secret. During the first few weeks, the skeptics seemed to be right. All the team uncovered was thick mud, scattered fragments of Roman pottery, and disappointment. Morale was sinking fast, until a volunteer's trowels struck something unexpected. Not the dull thud of packed earth, but the sharp ring of metal against stone. The sight fell silent. The team immediately shifted to delicate handwork, carefully scraping away layers of gray silt. Slowly, a line appeared, then a corner, then a wall. This was no random rubble. The structure was deliberate, built with clean, precise 90-degree angles. As the excavation widened, the scale became undeniable. This was not a fisherman's hut or a simple dwelling. It was massive. The walls were thick, solid, and clearly designed to endure centuries. Then, deeper still, the team uncovered something unmistakable, the curved shape of an apse, the semicircular space where an altar would stand inside a church. But this wasn't just any church. Its design was grand, complex, and astonishingly ancient, far older than anyone expected. And here's the part that stunned the archaeological world. This community existed before the Church decided which teachings were acceptable. What exactly were they preserving here, and what did they believe Jesus truly said? The location matched exactly where ancient pilgrims once claimed the house of Peter had stood. For generations, historians had mocked that idea. They dismissed the pilgrims as confused travelers, insisting the true site lay far away, high up on dry land. But the muddy ground at El Araj was telling a very different story. As centuries of grime were slowly washed away, colors began to emerge from the floor. Deep reds, vivid blues, warm yellows, a mosaic. Its condition was astonishing. The very mud everyone assumed would destroy the ruins had actually preserved them. It sealed the site like a time capsule, shielding the floor from looters, harsh weather, and even marching armies. What was once considered an obstacle had become the ruins' greatest protector. Yet the most shocking discovery wasn't the building itself. It was what was woven into the geometric patterns of the mosaic, a message. A written inscription, one that felt as though it was speaking directly to the excavators across 15 centuries, reaching back to around the year 500. And this was only the beginning. As the tiles were cleaned further, the team made another realization. This church had not been built on empty ground. It rested atop something far older. Beneath it lay another layer, one that held the answer to a mystery scholars had wrestled with for nearly 2,000 years. The discovery was about
Israeli
to take
forces
a
had
darker,
control of the
more
gate
profound
and considered reopening
turn.
it.
Capital of the Apostles. To understand why this mosaic matters, you must understand its location. This is not Jerusalem. It is not Nazareth. This is Bethsaida. If you know the Bible, that name should sound familiar. Bethsaida was the hometown of Peter, Andrew, and Philip. It was where Jesus healed a blind man and where he performed the miracle of feeding the 5,000. In many ways, it functioned as the operational center of the early apostolic mission. But Bethsaida is known for something else as well. It is one of only 3 cities that Jesus openly cursed. In the Gospel of Matthew, Jesus condemns the city, declaring, "Woe to you!" Despite witnessing countless miracles, its people refused to change their ways. He foretold that Bethsaida would be brought down to Hades. And history appears to agree. By the 4th century, Bethsaida had become a deserted place. It vanished from maps. Roman historians stopped writing about it. It was as if the earth itself had opened up and swallowed the city whole. For nearly 2,000 years, no one could agree on where Bethsaida actually was. 2 locations competed for the title. The first was Et Tel, a rocky mound high in the hills. It contained impressive ruins, but it sat far too far from the water to make sense as a fishing village. The second was El Araj, the marshy, waterlogged site where this excavation was taking place. The debate between scholars was fierce. Entire academic careers were built on proving one site and disproving the other. But the discovery of this church changed everything. When archaeologists dug beneath the Byzantine mosaic floor, they uncovered a layer of destruction. Below the church were homes from the Roman period, and not just any homes. These were fishermen's houses. The team found lead net weights, fishing hooks, and coins dating back to the 1st century, everyday tools of men who lived by the water, exactly as the Gospels described. This was the missing proof. The vanished city had been found. This was a fishing village that existed at the exact moment Jesus walked the earth. But this is where the story takes an unexpected turn. The way the church was constructed tells a story of intense focus, almost obsession. The Byzantine builders didn't simply place the church wherever space allowed. They deliberately positioned it directly on top of one very specific house. Why go to such trouble? In the ancient world, you didn't construct a massive basilica over an ordinary fisherman's home unless that home carried extraordinary meaning. The 5th century builders went to remarkable lengths to protect this exact spot. They enclosed the original room with walls. They treated the dirt floor of the old house as sacred. Every piece of evidence pointed to the same conclusion. They believed, without any doubt, that they were standing on the actual home of Peter. Skeptics might argue that this was guesswork, but ancient memory was stronger than we often assume. People didn't rely on maps or GPS. They relied on oral tradition. Grandfathers brought their grandsons to this place and said, "This is where the rock of the church lived." The findings at El Araj suggest that even after the curse and the disappearance of the city, a small group of believers remained behind. They protected the location. They kept the memory alive. They guarded the site quietly until the Roman Empire embraced Christianity, and they were finally able to build a monument above it. But that monument wasn't just meant to remember the past. It was also a vault. And inside that vault, they preserved a sentence that pulls us straight back to the moment Jesus spoke to his followers. It's not that simple, though, because what they wrote into the floor wasn't a verse you'll hear in Sunday school. The stones were about to break their silence. The Byzantine Code.
Let's return to the mosaic itself. As conservators removed centuries of dirt and grime, Greek letters slowly came into view. The team gathered around. Cameras clicked, hearts pounded. An expert in ancient Greek was called in to translate the inscription on the spot. The text opens with a dedication to a bishop, fairly standard for Byzantine churches. But then comes the shock. It names Peter. And not just by name. It calls him the chief and commander of the heavenly apostles. That title carries enormous weight. In theology, words are never accidental. The Greek terms used here are deliberate and powerful. They imply rank. They suggest authority. They reveal that as early as the 5th century, right here in the remote outskirts of Galilee, people saw Peter not merely as one disciple among many, but as the supreme leader. This touches the most heated debate in Christian history: papal authority. The Catholic Church claims its authority from the belief that Peter was the first pope, the rock upon which the Church was founded. Protestant traditions argue that Peter was simply a leader among equals. But here, buried deep in the mud of Peter's own hometown, is a text that supports the idea of him as the supreme commander. It shows that the local Christians, the people who lived where Peter lived, saw him that way. And here's the part that truly stands out. The inscription also names Peter as the key bearer, a direct reference to the moment when Jesus gives Peter the keys to the kingdom of heaven. But the mosaic doesn't stop there. This is where the story takes a dramatic turn. The hidden sentence. The team realized the inscription wasn't just a single block of text. It was framed inside a medallion, a circular border. Within that circle were fainter letters, smaller and far harder to read. They appeared worn down by centuries of footsteps, or perhaps intentionally carved lighter from the start. To the naked eye, they were almost invisible, so the team brought in advanced imaging equipment. Infrared scanners were used to see beneath the wear, the dirt, and the damage. When the image appeared on the screen, the entire tent fell silent. What emerged was a continuation of the inscription, a quotation, written as a direct statement from the Lord to his disciple. Ancient churches often include Bible verses on walls and floors. That's normal. But this text didn't match any standard manuscript. It felt like a variation, a reworking, or possibly an earlier version that was later edited out. The mood at the site shifted instantly. This was no longer just artwork. They were staring at what looked like a transcript of a conversation that took place 2,000 years ago, just steps from where they were standing. The words were personal, intimate, and they hinted at a responsibility no one had heard before. Guard my house. As the infrared images were processed, linguists began reconstructing the faint letters hidden in the inner ring of the mosaic. Piece by piece, the sentence came together. Guard my house. Take a moment to absorb that. In the Gospel of John, Jesus tells Peter, "Feed my sheep." In Matthew, he calls him the rock. But nowhere in the accepted New Testament does Jesus tell Peter, "Guard my house." Then came the second line, "For I go to prepare the heavens." We know the verse where Jesus says, "I go to prepare a place for you," but this is not the same wording. This suggests a division of labor. Jesus takes responsibility for preparing the heavens, while Peter is left in charge of guarding something on earth. And that raises an unsettling question. Why does this matter?
Because it implies the house might not be a metaphor for the church as an institution. It could be literal, the very building they were standing on. Remember, the church was built directly over a house, Peter's house. What if the tradition preserved here wasn't just that Peter once lived in this spot? What if Jesus specifically told him, "Stay here, guard this place, this is the anchor"? The gatekeeper theory. This fits with what scholars call the agrapha, sayings of Jesus preserved in ancient sources but left out of the Bible. Some are strange, some are profound, but finding one carved into the floor of a major pilgrimage site gives it extraordinary weight. It suggests the people of Bethsaida remembered something the gospel writers did not include. The phrase, "guard my house," reshapes Peter's role entirely. Not as an administrator, but as a sentinel, less about leadership, more about defense. Defense against what? That's where speculation begins. Early Christians believed sacred places were battlegrounds. They believed dark forces were drawn to holy sites. By instructing Peter to guard the house, Jesus may have been assigning him a spiritual mission that went beyond preaching. This also grounds the story in reality. After all, you need keys to protect a house. The mosaic suggests that early Christians believed this exact location, this precise patch of Galilean mud, was the embassy of heaven on earth, and Peter was the ambassador instructed to hold the line. The final secret. But there's another layer here. What does it mean to prepare the heavens? It sounds like construction. It implies that heaven itself wasn't finished yet, that while Peter stood guard on earth, Christ was actively building the next phase of reality somewhere else. And if we take the inscription literally, we're forced to ask a disturbingly specific question. Why here? Why this exact spot on the planet? Among fringe researchers and theologians, there's a whispered theory that certain places on earth act as anchors. As above, so below. What if Earth's geography functions like a circuit board, and some locations are connection nodes? If Jesus told Peter to guard the house while he prepared the heavens, could Bethsaida have been understood as a gateway, a literal bridge between realities? Look at the evidence. This wasn't just a fishing village. This was ground zero for the impossible. The blind regained sight, the hungry were fed from nothing. The laws of physics seemed weaker here. Viewed through a science fiction lens, a pattern emerges. Maybe guarding the house was never about a building. Maybe it was about guarding the breach. The earth keeps the secret. The church wasn't destroyed by armies. It collapsed during an earthquake in the 8th century. The ground shook, the walls fell, the mud reclaimed everything. It's almost as if the earth itself swallowed the secret. Guard the house, protect the foundation, remember the origin. The archaeologists have packed up their tools. The mosaic is covered again, shielded from the elements. But the words are out now. You can't unread them. The discovery at El Araj proves that the ground still speaks. We thought we knew the story of the early church, but it turns out we were only reading the executive summary. The real details, the technical manual for the interaction between heaven and earth, were buried in the mud, waiting for the right keys to turn. And now that they have, you have to wonder,
Was Peter told to guard the house until the heavens were ready? And if so, are they ready now?